who are saying, right, well, this is a woman sat here telling men that honesty is the right route. And a lot of men's lived experience seems to be that might not be the case. Like, they see nice guys getting beaten down, nice guys not getting anywhere, just looking for a nice woman and never getting anywhere, settling down and, you know, having a terrible relationship. This is the sort of stereotype, I guess. And then some dickhead or some bad boy going out, lying to women, being manipulative, being forward, being cocky, being arrogant, and he's getting all the action not through honesty. Whereas the honest, nice guy who's expressing what he wants maybe is failing. What would you say to the men that call bullshit?
Well, I think there's a difference between a nice guy or a good guy and a weak guy. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. So they might think, oh, I'm being really nice, but actually they're being a people pleaser, or they're being needy, or, you know, the reason that they're not challenging is because they're too scared, or they only want positive feedback from people, so they can't risk, you know, saying what they really feel and stuff like that. So that's there's being nice, and then there's being a walkover or a pushover or a people pleaser, and these are all completely different things. And I think sometimes you compare a bad guy to one of these guys, and actually that can be more attractive, because at least the bad guys have sort of started on this journey of becoming who they are, where, you know, they're not afraid to say what they think, and so it can be more attractive than a really weak guy who's a people pleaser, unfortunately. But, you know, both these guys have got to go on a massive journey. The top of the pyramid of attraction is a good guy, I promise you that. That's what I shouldn't speak for all women. It's what I want. My boyfriend is a good guy. Yeah. I'm definitely attracted to people who are honest, people who have integrity, people who know who they are, they're comfortable in their own skin, they've got direction. You know, these sort of universal qualities of virtues, I suppose. You know, somebody who's got courage, somebody who is honest, integrity, someone who's kind, someone who's patient. Isn't this what we all want people to be like? Isn't that what you also want in a woman? And I think you can sort of flip it around and say, you know, what do you want in a woman?
All the same thing. Yeah,
ultimately I think there is a sort of virtuous person that we are all sort of destined to become as we grow and mature and we realise the best way of being. You know, I think honesty, it becomes not a choice, it becomes a realisation. There becomes a point in your life where you realise that honesty is the best policy. And it's not a belief anymore, it's an understanding and a realisation. And I think that's probably true of all virtues, where you just start to understand, oh, this just is the best way of being. And then, you know, you could say, oh, but then you're going for this girl who's wearing a short skirt and is manipulating people and is a gold digger. Yeah, but wouldn't you rather that she was somebody who was honest, had integrity, kind, patient, supportive? Don't we all kind of want the same thing in a partner, ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's like this, the people that you're dating or the people that you're looking for are a reflection of the way you're feeling on the inside. Yeah. Like, there's this whole thing in sort of PUA of like stripper game, and again, this is nothing against strippers. I actually have stripper friends, like dancer friends, who are just really good people, and they're intelligent and they're cool. Just good women that chose that as what they wanted to do. But for me, the idea of bracketing them as the strippers, the sort of putting the label of like naughty, fetishes, a bit manipulative, like one night stand, all of those sort of associations that people have with them, and then the same guys that are sort of pursuing that as a course of action, like I want to date and have sex with strippers. To me, that's always just a reflection of the way the place they're at in their head. They just haven't figured out yet what is actually important or what they really want, you know. Yeah. So I think it often shows, like with relationships, like one partner is often a good reflection of the other partner. Like if one of the partners isn't honest or clearly isn't being real or is trying to impress people in a group at the sake of being honest himself or herself, often the partner's a fairly good reflection. What do you think about that?
Well, I think
like attracts like.
Attraction is a really interesting thing, and I've come to the belief that there are, when we're developing in a virtue, there's this sort of mature middle point of two immature poles that we sort of bounce between as we find our way into maturity. So, for example, to take courage as a virtue, that I don't think anybody would agree that having courage is a bad thing. If we look at the immature poles of that, you'd find being reckless, which is acting without any caution, and then there's being overcautious, which is where you don't take any action because you're too cautious. And in the middle, there's courage, which is acting with caution. So of balancing out those two poles, and you do see opposites attracting in this way. I think as you become more mature, you become more balanced, and then you attract someone who's more balanced. So, but you do see reckless people going out with overcautious people, and they teach each other, and they draw each other closer to this sort of mature centre point.
I agree with that.
And so I think
honesty, though, if you've got one honest partner and one partner that's still in that sort of immature phase where it's more important to be liked by people or to be looked up to than it is to be really authentic, do you see that in the same way? Do you think like an honest person is and a dishonest person?
Interesting. You know, I'm a very honest person, and I had a relationship with somebody who was very, very dishonest, which came to light later on. And I did think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what my lesson was to learn in that, because it seems clear to me what his lesson was. You know, we broke up because he was dishonest. But I'm not sure still what my learning from that is, unless it's just about accepting that people are on journeys and not taking it personally. Maybe was the lesson for me to learn from that his dishonesty wasn't personal.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we were talking about honesty last time we spoke, but I've recently had a real wave of just I need to be honest about everything, everything, because one little lie or deception it's addictive. You were more likely to tell a little lie next time, just exaggerating something or doing something different, and I just think it's such a bad way to live. And since I've been sort of more focused on that, I have been dating people who are like that as well, and with the sort of meditation and the inner work that you talk about as well, it's the same thing. I tend to be attracted to people that are more on those sort of paths than I would have been before. So I'm just curious as to your thoughts on whether there's a polarity there as well in terms of the way people want to live, if they attract each other, or if you don't think that's...
What's the question specifically?
It's a very good question.
So...
do you think that people, as they sort of grow and mature, there's a correlation between them attracting other people that are at a similar level of emotional maturity?
Yeah, I do. I think it works like a pyramid or a triangle, where as you become more balanced, you fit with someone who's more balanced. And I think it's about the masculine and the feminine energies. I think when we're in balance, that's when we feel whole. So when we're very, very imbalanced, so someone who's very, very masculine, someone who's very, very feminine, which isn't necessarily male and female. You can have very feminine males and very masculine females, and everybody is sort of a combination of a balance of being developed in the feminine and the masculine in different ways. And I think you are attracted to your imbalance on the other side.
I completely agree.
And that's what makes it feel so good when you have sex with somebody, because that is your energies coming together and becoming whole. But you can also develop yourself to become more and more whole. So you can, just because I'm a female doesn't mean I can't develop in the masculine. And I think that's really what we're talking about now, is that females tend to be more developed in the feminine and males tend to be more developed in the masculine. I don't know how much of that is genetics and how much of that is conditioning, but certainly a lot of it is conditioning. And I think speaking out, being assertive and knowing what you want, these are masculine qualities, and women can absolutely develop them just as much as any man can. And listening and understanding and taking things in is more of a feminine quality, but again, something that every man can learn to do as well as every woman can. And I think we're living in a really interesting time where the energies of the whole planet actually are sort of coming into balance, and hopefully we're in the final bits of making things balanced and things becoming equal, where women are now being encouraged to develop these masculine qualities and men are being encouraged to develop these feminine qualities, and it's not seen as men are like this, women are like this, and we come together and we need each other. It's we can be whole on our own, and we don't need each other. We can choose to be together, but that neediness is gone when the more whole you become.
I think that's really true. I think it's an interesting way of putting it as well. In terms of, so there's like a polarity of masculine and feminine, and you think before, perhaps we had extreme inequality globally between men and women, maybe the poles were here, and now they're sort of here, and you think that's like a happier medium because the man doesn't need a woman to balance him out, the woman doesn't need a man to look after her. We're coming into the sense of a centre point where people are, I guess, comfortable being exactly the way that they are.
Yeah, well, when it's about developing traits so that you're able to have the choice, actually, so you're not fixed into one thing. So, and then you can swap roles. So if you're a man and if we look at sort of the really stereotypical gender differeces and the way things have been, it's the man goes out to work, the man does these things, the woman looks after the children, supports all those kind of things. Well, that's all well and good if everybody's in full functioning order and everything's being taken care of. However, what about when the man gets sick and can't work, or when the woman gets sick and can't look after the children? Or we have very diverse lives now, and there might be a time when I need to leave my husband with the kids. So it's helpful if he's able to look after children. And I think as we all are encouraged and develop more into just whole human beings, and we start to enjoy learning and developing and not saying, I'm not that, I'm a man, therefore I don't have to be in touch with my emotions, or I'm a woman, therefore I don't have to be strong. But maybe you might enjoy being looked after, and that's the dynamic that you like. But it's still better if you're able to be strong and look after yourself, because when that person goes, you're not going to be a mess on the floor. It's not good to rely on your partner to fill a void in your life. Yeah. If you've got a partner that's really good at something that you're not good at, that's your opportunity to learn to be good at that thing. You've got someone showing you how to do it. I think that's why we're attracted to each other, to be honest. I think it's because when someone's very developed in something that you're not developed in, they are your vehicle to understanding that. And I think that's at the bottom of the attraction. So if we ignore that and just plug our voids with that other person, both literally and metaphorically,
plugging our voids now,
then we're actually denying ourselves the chance to evolve and grow in that area. So it's a mistake, I think.
I agree with that. So when we're looking at the language of consent, because that's obviously a big issue with street harassment and sexual harassment, is when is it okay to continue along a line of sexual activity? And we both know a little bit about this, but there's been a few different movements in talking about what should be the language of consent, what should people have to do or say in order to initiate and escalate a sexual activity. So there was no means no, which sort of states that if a woman says no, then all of it stops, and that's a way of her avoiding an escalation of sexual activity that she doesn't want to happen. What do you think about no means no?
Well, I think it's a good start. I think all of these movements are good in the sense that they're making people think about stuff, and that wasn't happening before. I think they're all limited, unfortunately. No means no is good. It's a start, but that does sort of rely on a woman saying no, and then there's an implied consent if she hasn't said no. So that's dangerous territory. Also, a no sometimes means a no in that moment, that then might develop and change into a yes. So I think we do need to respect the fact that these things are fluid. You know, your emotions and your feelings aren't fixed, and they can change. Then you've got yes means yes, which, again, progress. But then you're in the danger.
Let's just explain. So what is yes means yes? Yes means... No, I'll explain.
Yeah.
You can take over.
So yes means yes, I think, is about at every step of escalation, there needing to be a yes in order for it to progress.
Yeah.
So okay, at least then you know that there's consent, but for that next stage. But then again, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, where there being different types of touch. And, you know, if somebody says, can I touch you in this way? That might mean, I might say yes, because I think that's going to be pleasurable for me. And then it might turn out that actually he's touching in a way that's pleasurable for him, that's not very pleasant for me. I might want to retract that yes and be like, I don't want this anymore.
Yeah. So the language of, you know, can I kiss you? You know, can I touch you? Can I undress you? And you having to say yes. Yes.
For me, this wouldn't work at all.
Yeah.
For me personally, because I don't enjoy things being spoken about. I like things to just happen organically. Again, I think if that's what you need, then just find a way to express that at the beginning. Let somebody know that that's what you're going to need in order to feel comfortable. To say, just so you know, I don't want you to do anything without me consenting first. Find a way to say that at the beginning. Get the guy to agree to that. Fine. Then you've got these consent contracts, which is where it's been taken as far as for people to say that people need to sign a contract to agree that they're going to have sex. I was reading yesterday about an app where you both take a picture of you two in the contract to say, yes, we're about to engage in sexual activity and it is consensual. For a start, I don't really want an app to have pictures and data about who I'm having sex with, frankly. I don't think many people would. I'm not a fan of anything that makes sex into a commodity. It doesn't respect the fact that sex isn't really something that can be measured. You know, how are you defining the boundaries of what this sex is? I think also, the only time these contracts are going to be signed is when sex is consensual. That's not the problem. The problem is when it isn't consensual. So you're going to get contracts being signed for consensual sex. Great, that was consensual anyway. That one didn't need the contract. No one that wants to rape you is going to be signing any contracts or giving a shit about any contracts. So still, it's going to be like, he raped me, my word against his. It hasn't really solved the problem. The problem isn't getting consent for sex that was going to be consensual. Also, if I've signed a contract to say I want to have sex, I'm happy to have sex with somebody, say he then starts having sex in a way that I'm not enjoying, I might want to withdraw my consent and say, I'm not enjoying this, I don't want to have sex anymore. And he's like, sorry love, sign the contract. I don't want to be in that situation.
So I think but again, it's almost just like you start with a reasonable point and then it gets exaggerated and it just turns crazy. Like no means no, okay, understandable, yes means yes, okay, we get that. Then it just descends into insanity. Like a contract is more dangerous for a woman.
I think so.
Because if a guy, and it was originally started for groupies, so for celebrities and with groupies.
Yeah, and I understand that actually from that side.
But if the guy's standing there with a contract, what if he coerced her into signing a contract and then raped her so that he didn't have liability in court because there's a contract? It's almost doing the reverse of what it's meant to be doing and taking any responsibility off a man to respect.
Yeah, if you're the kind of person that's happy to force someone to have sex with you, you're probably going to be happy to force someone to sign a contract too.
Exactly.
It's not solving the problem.
So what you said, coming back to one point, I think is completely true, both in the street harassment, the conversation side, and in the sexual activity side, is creating your own language. You know, so you said like if, for example, the woman wanted to say, like, when I do this, like, it's not okay or something. If you wanted to talk about that before and just, like, figure out where you both stand with that, then that's okay. But that's your own language. Again, it's not this rule of what you have to do for everyone, because we know that doesn't work.
Yeah, and it is good that these things are being discussed because they're topic points that are opening up a conversation that's important. But yeah, I think it's really important to know what's right for you and to respect yourself as an individual, so that the law doesn't have to make a rule for you. You know, when we don't learn to speak up, people speak for us. So learn to speak up. Learn to work out what feels right for you, and then learn to build the confidence to ask for that. And don't feel pressured into doing things anyone else's way. You know, I think sex it's a complex subject. In the world of kink, which is probably the more complex area of gaining consent, where some people's sexual preference is to, you know, enact a rape scene. That's what some people want. Yeah. You know, and that's up to them. In the kink world, it's even more important for there to be language around consent, because it's so unclear. It can be so unclear during the act what's okay and what's not. And so I think that the guidelines around kink are quite interesting, because they talk about having safe words. You know, so a pre-agreed word for yes, I like that. No, I don't like that, and, you know, more, less, and stop, you know, and to have these safe words that let somebody know. Or you could agree, you know, gestures or hand movements. I think generally, if you're not comfortable with something, like squeezing someone like sharply a couple of times, nobody's going to think that's part of sexual play. Yeah. So, you know, maybe people could agree on something like that. Maybe there could start to be universal signs. Maybe universal signs will start to develop of, you know, like, do you want to come back to mine has become code for, would you like to come back to mine, possibly to have sex? Yeah. Maybe there will be other languages that, Netflix and chill, other languages that develop where meaning is implied without it having to be spelt out. But again, it's about you knowing, do you need it to be spelt out? If you do, that's okay. Work out what you need and then ask for it.
So for men, it's like, for a man, I think the kind of crux of what we've been talking about is like, for a guy, he just has to be listening and reading what she's saying at each step of the way for his own benefit as well. If a guy's escalating towards sex with a girl and he's not like listening to her or figuring out how she's feeling, it's taking away the fundamental part of his enjoyment of it as well, whether he realizes it or not. Like, your partner's pleasure is important to your own sense of like sexual gratification and pleasure. So I think like what seems to be like a common thread throughout this entire discussion is like, just look and listen, and at each point just try and figure out like what's going on, like what she's saying, how's she feeling, or how's he feeling. And that like communication, that level of heightened communication where you're really listening, observing and trying to understand each other, precedes any like thought of I want to go and have sex, I want to go and date. Just first seek to understand, then worry about that. Would you say that that's a good analysis, or do you have anything to
I think we should all endeavour to be trying to understand each other more and not put our values onto other people, to be trying to understand how other people work and what makes them tick and who they are and what they value and what they want, rather than thinking this is what I want and this is what I want to get. For men who use women for their bodies and their own sexual gratification, they're missing out. They're missing out on some of the most beautiful things in life. If you're reducing sexual activity to using a woman for her body, there's a whole nother dimension of sex that you're just missing out on, which is the most amazing part. I think you would agree.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes that want to treat people like that is coming from a fear of intimacy, which is generally coming from a low self-esteem. So again, it's like
emotional neglect.
Well, how can you work on yourself to get yourself to a point where you're not needing to use a woman for her body, where you're actually able to open up and be intimate with somebody and to have a connection with somebody as well as a sexual encounter. Yeah.
And do you think that's reflected in particularly the pickup industry, in that the guys that are just seeking to have sex often fail to be able to build stable relationships? It's like all of the sex and then never able to go anywhere, even with women perhaps they like, because they haven't breached that emotional gap.
And I think pickup actually makes it worse, because if you're not confident in who you are and you don't feel attractive in who you are, and then you deal with that by learning some set lines and routines that's not really you, that's you not now expressing yourself, you're acting now, you're using lines and routines that are developed by somebody else. If you then get results from that, you've created a positive feedback loop that's then reinforcing that initial belief that you're not good enough. So if you feel that you're not good enough and you feel drawn to act in another way, you want to look at that, because you are good enough. So you need to develop your belief that you are a worthwhile person, not think, okay, I'm going to act like this other person, I'm going to use these tricks to get someone into bed. And that it is a pattern that I've seen over and over again, where men use pickup techniques and stuff to get women, and they end up detaching more and more from who they really are, and they end up more lonely and isolated than before. It makes their problems worse, not better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean it's so hard, isn't it? Because when, I kind of see how lines in the first stages might help someone. If we've got a client here, me and you are coaching, we've got a client here, it's a pretty girl over there, and he's like, what? I don't know what to do. And you just tell him something that he can say, then he believes that line is going to help him. So I can kind of empathize with lines for getting someone from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
Just because if they believe that what they're saying is going to work, then it probably is because of that belief.
I'm not saying it's valueless. I'm saying when you don't work from the inside.
Yeah.
For me, it's about simultaneously working from the outside and the inside. And if you miss that inside bit, then you're on a road to disaster, really. Yeah. Because, there is some value in some circumstances in this fake it until you make it approach. But, you've got to remember to make it too.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just end up being so good at faking it that it becomes second nature.
And there's a lot of psychological problems that come after that. You start to lose track of who you are, and it separates.
Yeah.
Been there before.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have. We all do it.
Yeah.
It's not just in dating. I definitely had it in terms of career when I was younger. When I first was applying for jobs and stuff, I'd be writing on my CV, oh, I'm this really organised person, saying whatever it was that I thought they wanted to hear in order to get the job. And then I'd get the job and I'd be like, I don't want this job. Of course I don't. It's because they're looking for somebody else, and I'm trying to be the person that I think they want me to be, instead of being like, no, that's not who I am. That's not the right job for me.
Yeah, it makes you kind of I'm kind of the one thing that I have fear for the guys that are learning pickup artistry is that the women that they would really connect with deeply, they might have found her when they weren't doing pickup stuff, but now that they're doing it, they're almost driving away that group of women that they really would have met and connected with, because there's a veneer. So that, I don't believe that there's one person for everyone. I don't have any spiritual beliefs along those lines, but I do believe that there's a very small population, maybe 1% or less, that you really just do fit with, those people. And I think if every other person outside of that group you didn't click with, but with those in that group you really, really did click with on a fundamental level, that is a better position to come from than sort of, making the people that you don't click with like you a little bit more, but then lessening your connection with the people that really matter. And I think that's a worry for me of learning the pickup artistry, is guys get trapped in this loop of sex where it's just like, I've had sex, I need to have sex again, they go a week without it, and it's like now there's an emptiness where it's like, oh fuck, I'm not good anymore, I need to prove that I can still do it more. It's like an addiction, and it drives away the people that they would actually really connect with.
And it literally is an addiction as well. That is how it works. There's a void in you that gets temporarily fulfilled by the pleasure of having sex. In the same way that taking drugs temporarily relieves you from sadness, and then the drugs wear off and you're back to sadness, except it's even worse now. And there's a reason people get addicted to drugs. There's a reason people get addicted to sex. it's because you're not getting your real nourishment that you need. You're having a sexual encounter, but you're not having a human connection, which is the deep reason that you're being pulled towards somebody in the first place.
Yeah, agreed. So do you think this industry, again, inverted commas, do you think we need to separate now? Like, because maybe all of the stuff we've talked about, it's like pickup artistry as a rule versus just learning to communicate. The language of pickup artistry seems to trap people in these cycles of bullshit, cycles of sex addiction and cycles of feelings of insufficiency and missing out on the real human connections that they could have. Do you think we need to get rid of this language that's used, the language that's creating the pickup artist reality? Going to do day game, approaching a 2-set, going out with my wingman. Like, do you think that's in a way the problem? Because we know that language shapes reality, and the language that pickup artistry employs is creating a reality that's detached from normal human communication.
Yeah, I do, and I haven't always thought that, but it's more, again, it's like something that you sort of realise as you go along. I think when I first entered the industry, saying things like, "Oh, she's an 8 or 10, whatever," I used to think that's actually just efficient language for me gauging quickly how attractive you find somebody. And now I would never do that, because it's these small steps of objectifying women and turning them into objects that become a slippery slope into much worse ways of objectifying women and treating them badly. So I think nip it in the bud.
Nip it in the bud. Sounds like a euphemism. Maybe.
I do think language is important. I think it's really important.
Because the way I was thinking about it is, I was like, if a guy's walking down with his guy friend and he's talking about like pickup artist stuff, like, "Oh yeah, I'm so happy on my wing, like let's go sarging, meet some HBs." If then suddenly a woman came in that was like a friend, they wouldn't be able to continue that conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, if like a friend or a sister came in, they'd have to be like, "Oh, hello, how are you?" and change the way that they're communicating. But if they were just saying like, "Oh man, it's so good to see you, let's go to that art exhibition and I'll give you a push if I see a pretty girl," then a girl comes in and you could tell her all of that and it wouldn't have mattered. But the language that they use is almost like it segregates them from real other human beings. And so it becomes this game, it becomes this like hobby, this kind of weird underground hobby, just because they're using a language that's constructing that as a reality.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And
I mean, it's different for you because you've been on the inside. So you heard this language and you've been around it. But
but I don't like it.
No.
And that's one of the reasons I left the industry, was because I didn't like a lot of the pickup techniques and all the language or the treatment of women and the way that women were spoken about. And I think probably it was toned down when I was around. I probably didn't even hear the worst of it.
You were like second wave. PUA.
Yeah. But and I wasn't even there for a long time, but after a while you just start to see, oh no, you started off by saying 8 or 10, and now you have made women into objects, and now you're not going out to meet women, now you're going out to collect numbers, and women have become statistics. Yeah. And that's a slippery slope, and it often doesn't take very much time for it to get there, where you're then fueling your self-esteem by how many digits you've got in your phone. Yeah. It's not even about the women anymore. And I think all of these terms are a way of sort of diminishing women into a level where you feel entitled to them. I think one of the problems men face is that they feel they're down here and women are up here. Yeah. And the way I explain that to my students is there's 2 ways of dealing with this problem. This is a problem, this is a gap, this means that you're going to struggle in life. So you can either drag a woman down until you feel deserving of her, and then you're going to have
in the car to bring her down when she's out the window.
Just completely just devalue her and bring her down. And this is how negging works. It's about knocking her self-esteem until she becomes something where you start to see her as less worth, and then your low worth meets her there, and then you feel entitled to have that conversation. Or you can leave her up here being amazing, and you can work on realising that you are amazing too, and build yourself up, and you can meet her there. Yeah. And I'm all about this. Don't be dragging people down, because ultimately we're all worthwhile human beings. We we all have something to offer. You know, not all of us.
It's too soppy. I'm joking. Continue. It's fine.
I've got enough of mine.
You've got to be soppy, Minnie.
I can't remember what I was saying now.
You
anyway,
saying
so
that we're all worthwhile human beings. Go on.
I think that's probably enough.
Cool. I think we've covered everything.
Okay, cool.
That we could have covered, unless you've got anything else you wanna
that's
zip
all
around. Wow, that was pretty thorough.
Yeah, God, that was quite deep actually, wasn't it?
That was good. I like that. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I think we're still filming. But thanks, guys, for watching. if you wanna find Minnie's got a YouTube channel as well. So I'm gonna attach a link. What other social media stuff are you involved
I'm on
with?
Instagram, Minnie Lane Dating, and Twitter, although I don't really use Twitter, but Minnie Lane Coach, I'm on Twitter.
Okay, so I'll attach those in the videos so everyone can find. And is there anything is there any final words?
I think we've covered quite a lot of ground there. Maybe that's enough.
Many topics 2 or 3 times, which is great. Well, cheers, guys, for watching. See you in the next video.